Welcome back to the Arsenal transfer room, where we are 3 days into the transfer window and Arsenal fans are already losing their heads on social media. There is plenty to get into today. Not all of it is great and positive, but we're going to dissect it as rationally as we possibly can. But before we get into that, if I could just ask you to subscribe down below if you're not already. We are closing in on 18,000 subscribers, and if you could click the like button, I would be massively grateful. But look, let's start with this. Arsenal are monitoring the situation of Jorel Hato. This has come from Simon Collins, and it is not the first time that we've been linked to Jorel Hato. If you were following the channel last year, you'll remember that last summer we were talking about him a fair bit because we were linked to him then. He is a 19-year-old, plays for Ajax. Pretty incredibly, at the age of 19, he has already played over 100 senior times for Ajax. He's a left back, left centre back, left footed. The most simplistic way of describing him is a left-sided Jurriën Timber. Obviously, they are from the same place. They played for the same team, and they have a very similar build. And they play, I suppose, in a fairly similar way. So it's not quite as simplistic as that, but he was on our radar previously. I had kind of always thought that in going for Ricardo Calafiori, because Ajax were unwilling to let go of Jorel Hato last summer, that Calafiori was kind of the replacement. But apparently we're still monitoring him. Now, I've also seen today that Chelsea are monitoring him. I actually think he would be a fairly sensible signing for Chelsea to make. I think Levi Colwill is not as good as perhaps some Chelsea fans think he is. He's not bad, but he's not the best. And a lot of work is, or not work, basically Cucurella has to do a lot and play a lot because they don't have many alternative options. So, yeah, if Chelsea went for him, that wouldn't surprise me. But it is interesting that I was looking at this today, right? And in terms of why perhaps some Arsenal fans are losing their heads early, and they are, and there really is no need to panic in the way that some Arsenal fans are. But the picture on the left there, the tweet on the left there, forward a key priority, interest in Sesko, Isak, Neto, and Nico Williams. Midfielders, Onana, Bruno, Zubimendi are being watched. New defender, Hato, on Arsenal's radar. And likely a new goalkeeper, as Ramsdale is expected to leave. Now you're thinking, well, Ramsdale's already there. That's because that one on the left was a tweet from May last year, May 2024. The one on the right here from Gunnerblog with The Athletic today, Zubimendi arrival maybe in July. We're going to talk about that. Sesko and Gyökeres still in the frame. Watkins hasn't been discounted. We'll talk about that too. Club holds talks for Leroy Sane, or with Leroy Sane. We'll talk about that. And Garcia chances fading. The club has alternatives. You'll notice the one on the right and the one on the left are basically identical, with almost identical names. You know, Sesko, Nico Williams. So Sesko was the option, talking to wingers. Still happening. Zubimendi, last summer, we're doing it this summer. Hato, on the radar last summer, on the radar this summer. And then a new keeper, which we still need to do. And that is a little bit disturbing when you actually think basically our plans for last summer are still the plans for this summer because we effectively did none of it. Now, okay, we got Calafiori, we got Marino, but ultimately we have to nail this summer just to be in the place that we kind of planned on being last summer. And that's if we get it all right. And that is poor. And I do think now, if you look back at the last 3 consecutive windows, January of this year, summer of last year, January of last year, I think we dropped the ball. I do. I think we stagnated a little bit. I think you have to constantly be evolving, and we didn't do it. But look, we'll talk about the Gunnerblog article because I do think it's interesting. We'll start with this. Although Victor Gyökeres and Benjamin Sesko appear foremost in Arsenal's thoughts, there are also other names under discussion. Ollie Watkins has not been discounted entirely, although the club would have some reservations on price. So still possibly on the radar. Villa may have to sell. Well, probably do have to sell. And maybe if he ends up being cheap, we get it done. For me, Ollie Watkins cannot be the only striker we buy this summer. That cannot happen. He's just not the top tier that we want. I mean, Isak was the top tier. The next run down, you're then talking about Gyökeres, Sesko. For me, Ollie Watkins is, you know, if you're not going to get Sesko because you want cheaper and you want win now, then you get Gyökeres, who's still younger than Ollie Watkins. And if you don't want to get Gyökeres because he's old and you want the project player, then you get Sesko. Like, there's no real excuse to go for Ollie Watkins unless you go for Sesko and Ollie Watkins. And you say, we give Sesko time to bed in whilst also having Ollie Watkins for the next couple of seasons. But I don't think we would do that. Now, one thing I would say, Gunner Blog has begun to get a reputation of being, what's the word? Kind of, not depressing, basically tempering expectations. That's the phrase. Tempering expectations of the Arsenal fan base with what he puts out with the Athletic. And that's no bad thing. Because actually, if you think about it, I've just said the last 3 transfer windows were incredibly underwhelming. So someone that's tempering expectations may well be doing so correctly. But if we did end up just with Ollie Watkins, that would be poor. Outside of that, on Gyökeres and Sesko, Arsenal have explored the parameters of deals for Gyökeres and Sesko. Arsenal's leadership group have debated the merits of both players. If they have made a clear decision on their preference, they're keeping it close to their chest. If it is to be Sesko, RB Leipzig would prefer an early sale. Having missed out on Champions League qualification, there's a financial shortfall for Leipzig to meet. Gyökeres, however, may be the cheaper overall package. So we still don't know. Maybe Arsenal have decided. It still seems like they're ploughing on with both. And at some point, the decision will be made. So we still have to wait and see. On to the wingers. This is still coming from Gunnerblog. In the wide areas, Arsenal have explored a number of options. Senior figures at the club have held talks with Leroy Sane. The expectation had been that Sane would renew with Bayern Munich. But Arsenal are an alternative option if he decides to move on. And I do think we have to be clear that Leroy Sane is not Raheem Sterling. Bayern Munich want to keep Leroy Sane. They just don't want to keep him on the wages that he's on, because he isn't a guaranteed starting winger, and that's the sort of money that he's currently on, right? But they do want to keep him. And like I've said, if this was the 3rd attacking signing that we made, I really wouldn't mind it too much. If it was the only winger that we bought in the summer, I think that would be a problem. He can play off the right, he can play off the left, scored at an exceptionally good rate for Bayern Munich last season. We'll wait and see. Outside of that, or kind of actually not outside of that, but in line with that, while there has been a lot of speculation about the left flank, Arsenal may need a player who's an option on the right. Ethan Nwaneri can play in that position, but in the long term, he has been earmarked for a central role. And this is what I said, and why I've said I thought we needed Mbeumo, although it now sounds like he's going to Chelsea. Chose Chelsea over us, apparently. Crazy. But if Nwaneri is being earmarked more as the Erdegaard backup / replacement / competition, then Saka is going to need his own cover, because we saw last season what could happen if he doesn't have it. And again, you know, Leroy Sane played off the left for Man City predominantly and has played off the right for Bayern Munich predominantly. So he is a player that can do both. And for free, I can understand why it would make sense. But again, still need that left winger. On the left wingers, Arsenal's interest in Nico Williams is long-standing. We know that. The coaching staff are keen admirers of Real Madrid's Rodrigo, but a deal would be challenging due to the finances involved. We know that. Anthony Gordon is also liked, but would also command a high fee. I don't think that is something that would happen either. Further on Nico Williams, this actually came from Ben Jacobs, not from Gunnerblog. Athletic Bilbao have begun initial talks with Nico Williams to renew his contract. Discussions include a deal that would increase his current €58 million release clause and push the player's salary towards €10 million a year. Now, to be clear on this, when people are reporting Spanish La Liga salaries, they are talking net. So €10 million a year, you are talking £300,000 a year, near enough, for Nico Williams. And that's what he'd be on there, let alone what he'd then want to be on if he moved to the Premier League. And an increased release clause. If that happens, he's staying in Bilbao. And if you're not familiar with Bilbao and the way they recruit, because they only recruit from the region that Bilbao is in Spain, which makes it very difficult, they can afford, or they have to pay, those sorts of numbers to keep their players, because they have such a small pool of players to go for. So it may well be that he ends up just locked in at Atletico Bilbao. we'll wait and see. Arsenal are in the market for a new goalkeeper as an understudy to David Raya. Their long-standing interest in John Garcia is well documented, but he appears to be headed elsewhere. Arsenal are already working on alternatives, coming from Gunnerblog again. It really does sound like John Garcia is going to move to Barcelona. We missed it. We lost it. We could have done it last summer, but we didn't. So now we have to find the next one. I don't know. There's still a part of me that thinks you could maybe keep Carl Hain and Tommy Setford as the third choice. Kepa Arrizabalaga is available for about 5 million quid, apparently. The issue I have with that one, because I wouldn't mind Kepa as your backup and with the experience that he's got. The only issue is 5 million quid, supposedly, but he is on like 150 grand a week, which is way too much to be paying for a backup goalkeeper. So his wages would have to come down if we did that. Martin Zubimendi's move to Arsenal is effectively agreed. Now, this is interesting. The Zubimendi thing is what has sent some people into a bit of a headspin today. Martin Zubimendi's move to Arsenal is effectively agreed, pending a medical, but fans may have to wait for confirmation, as Real Sociedad have expressed a preference for the deal not to be ratified until July for accounting purposes. So obviously, July is the start of the next financial year when it comes to football clubs and PSR and all that stuff. And clearly, they would rather the sale went into the next accounting year rather than this one. So if that's what they want, then fair enough. And then Hand of Arsenal said this: Martin Zubimendi will be joining Arsenal Football Club pending a medical. Stop reacting to everything and anything. So what are people reacting to? They are reacting to this. It was in an interview with Spanish radio. Obviously, Zubimendi at the moment is on international duty with the Spanish team. He gave this interview. The interview itself got aggregated by the Madrid Zone, a Real Madrid outlet. And this was how they aggregated it. So Zubimendi, my future, it will be a long summer. I don't know how it will end. If Xabi Alonso calls me to join Real Madrid, I've always said Xabi is my idol, and it was a privilege to have him as my coach at La Real B. If he called me now, I don't want to talk about that hypothesis. I'd rather talk about the present. It would be disrespectful to talk about that while I'm on national team duty. I posted pics on a Spanish beach while rumours said that I was in London doing medical exams for Arsenal. Yes, I did that to make it clear that those rumours were not true. Now, that sounds a bit blunt, a bit harsh, and not ideal. The actual translation in English of the interview said something slightly different. So he commented on the fact that last week he uploaded a photograph on Sagüez Beach where they placed him having a medical examination in London with Arsenal. He said, he's an example of what surrounds football. Many times I get up in the morning and read things that I did not know I had done. That was a clear example. It's true. I don't take it very seriously, but, well, I uploaded those photos to emphasize a little that it wasn't exactly the reality that was happening. So that is slightly different, but it is still the case that, you know, he was seeing reports that he was in London doing a medical, and he wasn't. He was in Spain, and he posted pictures of that. So, yeah, I still think Zubimendi will happen. I still think that you've got the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. The medical will happen, and yes, it would be nice if we could just see him in an Arsenal shirt, job done officially today, so that we don't need to worry about it. And like I said, this is kind of where it ties back to the previous transfer windows that we've had and why Arsenal fans are on edge, because we have kind of flopped the last 3 transfer windows in a row. And you look at last summer particularly and you say kind of nothing that we wanted to happen last summer actually happened, other than making David Raya permanent, which was always going to happen, and doing Marino and Calafiori. So I could understand a bit of the head loss, but I do just think we need to relax. We need to calm down. And ultimately, if things do go wrong, then react. But don't preemptively lose your heads before things have gone wrong. Anyway, that is the roundup for today. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments. I will be back tomorrow with another one or a live stream. Maybe we'll go live tomorrow just so that we can check in, see how people are doing. Also, I'm lining up some guests for those live streams as well. Not all of them Arsenal fans, some of them from other clubs, but I think that will be good. So make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. Please do click that like button. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I will catch you all on the next one. Until then, goodbye.